See if we can come to know mind, prana, breath, awareness, all are the same. When the prana flows in the side channel, then what's happened is this conceptual mind, suffering mind, kleshas. Quite simple, the science of completion stage or anatomy of subtle body. Very scientific, although Western science may not agree with. For today's retreat, generate, cultivate why you are here. I'm sure you know why you are here, but see if you can contextualize your motivation for today's completion stage retreat. Why do we practice completion stage? Why you are interested in? What steers up? What's the purpose of what you will do in completion stage, such as Tummo practice? There are so many deviations of so-called Tummo, breathing techniques, and so forth. If you Google Tummo, you can look at a lot of things, or YouTube or something. So it's important to contextualize as well. Also, it's important to not too much mystified, so to speak, especially in our tradition. This completion stage is quite secretly or discreetly transmitted traditionally, still in a traditional way. However, I will talk more about why I'm introducing, and as well as Tummo practice, more practical aspect of introducing the technique and why we do now, not waiting until the generation stage is perfected. We want to be healthy, we want to help others, we want to awaken, right? We want to make this human life meaningful as much as possible, whatever years left for each of us, right? And the fulfillment of what's possible, what we can do with this human body. Usually we think very limited, 100 years, maybe that's the longest. Although my mom is 97, seems like she is going on forever. But still, there's no such a thing forever, right? Sooner or later, everybody move on. So what we got right now, human body. So that's the premise of Tantra. So as long as we have this human body and this certain constituents, we're going to talk about things that this human body possess, then we can practice completion stage. The mind I was talking about, it's completely same mind we got as the Shakyamuni Buddha or those awakened masters. Same natures. Just right now it's veiled, so we only need to remember perhaps or recognize it. So there are so many techniques to do that. And this is one of the most powerful technique, the completion stage. Once we get into the completion stage, always have this tension or the balance of the theory and practice. Like practice first or theory first, or which one is it? Those kind of questions. Especially when coming to that, there's a higher practice, higher teaching, like a completion stage. People think, oh, just do it, just do it and get the experience out of that, your own direct experience, right? Or no, it's very dangerous. You have to know everything, how to go step by step and all those kind of ideas. Then Dakinis Whisper takes the kind of middle way, so to speak. We learned a very authentic technique, which all the great masters put on test and proved its efficacy as proven. We learned that one, maybe 20%, 30%, 50% if we learn this in this kind of situation, little more formal setting. This is the commentary to Vajra Yogini generation completion stage practice. So this is the perfect opportunity. We learn the kind of theoretical background, why we do what we do. Then we put on test in ourselves, like in each individual. So I'm going to start the Tummo practice more technical side in subtle body training. So each of you are most welcome. Actually, I'm really strongly encouraged. This is the first time I introduce this kind of higher practice. As I was saying, there are so many different deviation or variations or context. This Tummo practice was introduced and practiced by yoga teachers or yoga practitioner or Qigong or some new age or so many. So I just decided, okay, so we have a very authentic tradition, and all the great masters attained the rainbow body on the basis of Tummo realization. So why don't we just learn how they did it, in this context? Then at least in our level, then start putting into our own perhaps daily practice, little by little, including this 9-round breathing, the powerful base breathing, and so forth. So try to remove that mystification or demystifying that idea as well. So that's the kind of my motive. I think you guys are all ready. We came step by step as well, and all our basis. Lama Tsongkhapa, ear whisper lineage, great masters have done that. So just maybe I gave you the little handout. So I don't want to make you tangled more, what you call the nuts through conceptual mind. So I just go gently. But this is the traditional, based on Lama Tsongkhapa's presentations as well. Vajrayogini completion stage. As you know, Vajrayogini practice we are practicing involves generation and completion stage both. When we are practicing the generation stage, we practice completion stage element as well, as you know. For example, body mandala, and actually everything, even dissolution is a completion stage element, and inconceivable yoga, uncommon especially, and so forth. This explanation comes after completed the explanation of generation stage. So now we are starting this long dedication prayer composed by Sarchen that include the completion stage verses. This long dedication prayer is the entire Lamrim, or the Vajrayogini Lamrim, stage of the path to awakening, based on Vajrayogini practice. So it includes everything. So this is a very good, actually, treasure for us to really go through one by one. When the Tummo beauty of the ordinary clear light, enjoying radiant, playful laughter in the Avaduti, totally softened, delights the useful ham syllable, may I attain the state of great bliss union. When the red-black ram, RAM, at the center of the 3 channel of the navel is set ablaze by the upper and lower wind, its Brahma flame burns up the 72,000 impure drops. May my Avaduti completely fill with pure drop. Yeah, so those paragraphs referring to Tummo. Traditionally, Tummo practice is the first yoga, is very important, the basis of all the completion stage that follows. For example, 6 Dharma, 6 yoga of Naropa, 6 yoga of Niguba, as well as all these other traditions, like Dzogchen traditions. I'm not that familiar, but completion stage refers to the highest yoga tantra. We use that term in the new school, like a new school, Geru, Sakya, Kagyu, those are called the new school. Then old school, that's the Nimma school. We call the highest yoga tantra completion stage. So the first explanation will be about the anatomy of the body and mind. What is the completion stage? What completion stage refers to the realization of the highest yoga tantra. You already entered the highest yoga tantra. That means you are practicing the completion stage. You enter into completion stage sooner or later. And also we are talking about awakening in this lifetime. That's the kind of premise of highest yoga tantra. It's called a shortcut, quick path. Of course, it has lots of fine lines. So what's the purpose of the composition stage? And what's the method? How to go about it in this tradition and so forth. To attain the realization of meaning clear light. So Buddha mind, the mind of spontaneous great bliss. All this terminology, don't worry too much about it. So this is also translation. I'm using the Geshe Kyo-san's translation. Spontaneous, what's that? Or the penge. Penge is the sometimes translate the innate or connate or indwelling or the ecstatic great bliss that directly realize emptiness. You remember in highest yoga tantra method is great bliss. We use the great bliss to directly realize emptiness. In sutra level, we talk about method and wisdom, right? Method is great compassion, of relative bodhicitta, and wisdom of emptiness, right? Same thing, but in Tantra, we use the term is the great bliss as a method. Then they are realizing both enhance each other. We need both. And what's the method? How we can go about it? By dissolving all our inner wind. So that is a prana, translation of prana, energy wind, room, inner wind, into the indestructible drop at the heart center. We're going to talk about more. So what's this indestructible drop? So indestructible means Vajra, Nishippe. So we will talk about, when we talk about the drops, channel, chakras, and prana, wind, those kind of subtle body anatomy, we're going to go into this drop, very special drop each of us carried at our heart center. In order to bring the wind, prana, just we are meditating, we visualize prana flows into a central channel, then coming up from lower belly, then reaching the heart center. So that's a kind of a movement. So that's the method. First coming into, stay, and then finally completely become one with it. That's the method we use. That's called the yoga of wind. So that's technical term, yoga of wind, sometimes called Sarung Tikle Nenjo. So method to master over our inner wind. So we are mastering the inner wind. Or we can control. Right now we have no control over. All the wind rune is the side channel everywhere. Sometimes more dominated the desire side, sometimes the anger side, hardly come into the central channel. But throughout the course of our activities, certain time we can recognize, but just momentarily. So we want to extend that. We want to learn how to recognize it, how to untie, how to bring more pure prana into central channel more and more. That's the kind of game, so to speak. Ramazan Kappa is very big on this yoga of wind. He said all completion stage meditations are directly or indirectly included within the yoga of wind. This is Sarung Tikle meditation or true core. That's the kind of initial exercise, part of the Tummo practice, but the initial exercise true core practice, which in our tradition, we have 6 main true core exercises I kind of shared with some of you. So those are very important to get started, loosening up the knots, straighten the channel, and shaking the bindu, distributing energy drops, and so forth. So those are very important. And in our tradition, I just want to let you know, our tradition kept this kind of explanation very much like oral transmission, ear whispered, never kind of publicly explained in a public situation. Then we have a very strong tradition of this yoga of wind and kept it very pure traditions we carry. So that's the yoga of wind. In terms of explanation, we have to start with these 3 things. Any authentic tradition has these 3 things: basis, method, how to go about it, and the result. What is the result? What is the method? What is the basis? This basic working basis. What we got. So first we have to start what we got. 3 basic objects of knowledge. 3, when we say the 3, of course, body, mind, and the elements. So 3 basic objects. How to attain inner pure Dakiniland through the practice of completion stage. So first one is the 3 basic objects of knowledge related to the body. I was referring to how fortunate we are. Each of us has this human body, which includes the 6 elements: bone, marrow, white drops. Those are we receive from our father side. When we said our human body, right, as if we own it. None of that, one single thing we own, in a sense. I mean, of course, we eat something like right now we eat broccoli or healthy food, and they go into the certain part of it. But the basis of our human body when we are born, everything came from somebody else. Like what my mom ate, what my dad ate. So anyway, from father side, we receive these bone, marrow, white drops. Another term is this Chansen Kalpo. Chansen is the bodhicitta, white bodhicitta. That's called white drops. Then from mother side, from our mother, we received flesh, skin, and blood. So those elements, 6 elements. If we have these 6 elements, we can practice. But if we lack one of them, difficult. It's unfortunate in terms of practicing a completion stage. So that's a gross body. So we are talking about gross or physical body, which will decay. So once we come to that time to body separate from the consciousness, then these things started to dissolve or disintegrate or back to the earth or whatever, recycled. Now, next level is called Sattva body. These are many of you familiar with to a certain extent, and also some kind of experience of it. Sattva body is experiential body, feeling body, dream body, and the bird body, very similar. We cannot see it, but we can experience it. We can feel it. This is the bridge between the physical or the gross body and very subtle body, subtlest body, which we're going to talk more about it. So subtle body, so that's the level we walk in a sense. But when we do lots of exercises, physical exercises, basically we are working on all different levels. For example, Turko, we practice in subtle body training. The main difference in terms of exercise, even like a yoga stretch or some certain very similar kind of movement or twist or everything. When we twist, not just twist and feel good about, for example, mid-torso twisting and the muscles loosening up, we are untying the knots in a subtle level or lower belly or these chakras. Chakra is basically nuts, right? It looks like a beautiful flowers and, lotus open, but in a sense, it's like we want to untie. It's a knots, a bandage created by our many things, karmic obscuration as well as emotional creation, conceptual obscuration. All these things create these knots. That's the subtle body. We can talk more about the subtle body, but just go the kind of rough sketch, rough mapping, inner landscape of the body first. Okay. Then something called the very subtle body. These are the composed of inner wind, prana, inseparable from our very subtle mind. So this is very important. So this subtle body refers to the combination of the room, inner wind, prana, which is inseparable from our very subtle mind. We're going to talk more about the subtle mind in the next session. But so mind and room, So those two move to the next life. When we say the separate the mind from body, then mind leave the body to the next bardo and the next life, right? But when we say that, but that the subtlest room goes along with the mind. Of course, scientifically cannot prove it, but very interesting. For example, baby carried certain traits or the even birthmark or something like that. How can you explain it if just only mind moves? But this subtle wind, some kind of material, or it's not physical, but some kind of like a light or electricity kind of things, and moved along with the mind. So that part carried some kind of imprint from previous life. Then each baby already born with certain traits and even physical marks, like some reincarnations have the same kind of face. Sometimes same wrinkles already have the same as the previous one. Anyway, that's called a very subtle body. So when we refer to the body, we are not just talking about the physical body, also not just talking about the subtle body. It's referring to this subtlest body as well. Okay, so this leads to the Buddha form body. This room, body side, prana forms, it becomes the Nirmanakaya. Mind side, subtlest mind leads to the Buddha mind. So when we say the Buddha mind, Dharmakaya, then form body, Nirmanakaya. This Buddha form body is a deathless Vajra body. That's a kind of synonym for this level, subtlest body. So this is that kind of very brief version of the traditional elaborated explanation of the basis related to the body. Now mind, so how about the mind? Mind also has three levels, you can see 3 dimensions. Gross mind, we are very familiar with gross mind, the 5 sense consciousnesses and delusion produced by gross inner wind. So I was talking about awareness, consciousness, and wind, prana, all go together. This gross inner wind bring or the produce or creates 5 sense consciousnesses and delusions. Those are called gross mind, including conceptual mind. Then the subtle mind, the first 7 signs of absorption produced by subtle inner wind. So this subtle mind, when we practice the 9 stages of death dissolution, or not only death, but in other words, the last stage of the absorption of completion stage, or even each of us will experience whether we recognize or not at the time of death. So that's called the subtle mind. First 7 signs of absorption produced by subtle inner wind, prana. What's the very subtle one? That the 8th sign conjoined with the very subtle inner wind. So we are talking about very subtle body, prana, inseparable from the very subtle mind. Then here, what is the subtle mind? So this is called continually residing mind. So always there, also synonym of the mind of clear light. So realization of this is the aim of Tummo, or the completion stage. Of course, Tummo is not about, drying up the sheets. I will talk more about the conventional purpose as well, but this is the kind of ultimate purpose. So very subtle mind. So this, in terms of this Mishippe, so this continually residing mind, why it's called continually residing mind? Because it has been with us since beginningless time. We always had this, and will remain with us until we achieve enlightenment. Other minds, such as the deluded mind of attachment, anger, and jealousy, are called temporary mind because they will cease when we achieve liberation. It's a kind of hopeful, no? Because those things, that's not who we are. Those are just temporary. So it will cease. They will cease. They will stop when time comes. When we practice and we had achieve liberation. Term very subtle mind, continually residing mind, and mind of clear light all means the same, all refer to the same thing. So then what's the method? So that goes to the next, how to go about it, how to realize this mind of clear light, continually residing mind. The third dimension of the basis, three basic objects of knowledge. Third one is something related to the elements. So this goes Saron Tikre area, this inner landscape, channels, drops, prana, inner wind, those things. And of course, each section has so much to talk about, but I just want to give a very rough idea in case you're not so familiar with. I'm sure if you are practicing with me, you know how all these relate to each other. Channels are like a house, sometimes metaphors are a house, like a storage house. Channel is a house. Drops, tikle, or bindu are like a furniture. So house, then there's a furniture inside. Then the inner wind, prana, is the owner. So owner moves the furniture like here and there. Inner wind is a center owner or agent. Then also inner wind is related to the breath, so control. But I like other metaphor. The channel is like a road, like a pathway. So your body, imagine your body is like a city, and all the channels, all the roads are going here and there. Main central highway is the center, and the side road, maybe old highway or something. So that is the channels, pathway, psychic pathway. Okay, drops are like a treasure which a horse carries. So inner wind is like a horse. Then awareness is like a owner or the horse rider. Awareness and the horse actually have to go together. Horse and the rider, right? Horse carry this treasure, then bring it to all different places, distribute all different places. So that's kind of a relationship among these three and four, if we add the awareness. So channels, drops, inner wind. Of course, main one, the three principal channels we've just practiced. Then drops, the white drops and the red drops. White drops we receive from the father side, father at the time of conception, and the red drop we receive from the mother at the time of conception. We carry that one. Then quintessential drops. That's another term, is indestructible drop at the heart center inside the central channel. It's like a little pea and capsules. I don't know if there's a picture or not, but like a bottom one is red, half pea, bottom one red, top one is white, very small, like a little pea, and that was residing inside the heart center. So that is called the indestructible drop. Why it's called indestructible drop? Because it will not divide it until we die. It's kind of going together like this until we die, or until the complete completion stage, realization, right? So that means deathless state. So during the process of dying, our inner wind dissolves right into this drop and cause it to open, like a metaphor. I often use the metaphor of lotus opens, right now closing, open, thereby allowing our very subtle mind to live and go on to the next life. So that's happened at the time of death. There are pure inner wind, impure inner wind, pure prana and impure prana. Then it's very important to develop the pure inner wind. That's what we are doing here. Because if pure wind predominates the mind becomes calm, blissful, peaceful, then that leads to the wisdom of great bliss, which realizes emptiness. That's what actually we are aiming for. The impure prana, So that's what we are having right now, flowing into a different channel. That is the root of samsara. In completion stage, you can say. In one way to cut the pie, one way to explain the root of samsara is this inner impure prana. That's why it's not that just conceptually trying to understand doesn't work. We have to purify, we have to develop this pure prana. Then very subtle inner wind, very subtle prana or room leads to the illusionary body, Buddha body, Buddha's physical body, manifestation body, because of compassion. Right? Have to have this Buddha body to benefit sentient beings. Then very subtle mind I was talking about leads to the Buddha mind, Dharmakaya. So that's something related to the element, very nutshell or the very simplistic way to explain it. This is the basis. Any question in terms of a basis? Of course, many of us are very conceptual level right now, but still you can feel, this is what I was doing in the subtle body training, or you might have some little moment. Is this interesting, or you already know and just kind of summarizing here? At the time of death, both go together, right? So your question is the wind, very subtle wind and the subtle mind go together and merge into the whatever, like a Buddha mind, Prajna Paramita, inseparable from gurus.
I guess I didn't know before that subtle wind went with subtle mind as part of the reincarnation process.
Yeah.
I guess I thought wind just kind of fizzled out. I don't know.
Yeah, my naive mind in the early stage of my training, I just thought, okay, a mind lives from the body, that's the end of this life and definition of the death. But subtler than that, there are lots of nuance, this subtlest inner wind. Gelugpa system, very clear when we read the literature, and more recently, last 10 years or so, literature started to come out and explaining these subtleties. And also my personal experience, I'm convinced, like this little boy, of course, remembering is good and the mind transfer, right? So they remember the previous life and so, but then certain little boy, not necessarily the Buddhist Tuko, but just reincarnated boys, bringing this physical manifestation of the previous life's event. Certain birthmarks on the head or something like that. For example, they went to war and got a bullet under the head, like something. My son had a birthmark, so I just did a little bit of research and so forth, what's going on kind of thing. But there's research, reincarnation, or the little kids interviewed, then went back to their village. They remembered their own previous life, place where they lived and how they died or so forth. Then very shocking, tragic death. Those kids who remember as a quite shocking kind of experiences. Then trace the kind of, draw the dots, so to speak. Then the most likely, this inner winds, no that kind of thing, but then in terms of proving in scientifically, it might be difficult. Therefore, it's so important to define this inner wind, prana, pay attention. It's not only mind and the prana go together.
You know, we're reading, or you're teaching us about the different levels, and, you know, we're talking about, you know, maybe I can, within a few lifetimes, go to Kechara or maybe Poa, and then, you know, eject the consciousness. And I'm wondering, and I don't know if it's referred to in the practice of the really like advanced practitioners who don't do Poa and stay in meditation for some days after clinical death. And I wonder maybe if you could address that in this context. I know the Tibetans have a name for that meditation, but I can't remember.
Kudan. Yeah, it's called Tukdan, and my teacher stayed quite a number of days. So Tukdan is the best. That shows the kind of realization, showing off really show the focus, what they did in their lifetime. So as a Vajrayana practitioners, we didn't need to say, I'm practicing Vajrayana or I'm doing this and that. At the time of this, it proves. So in terms of power, of course, said power is a method to go to the Pure Land or, Dakini land or, ultimate power is merging our mind with the Guru. So in Ramachopa, our Guru Yoga, beautiful, beautiful Guru Yoga we have, it said our ultimate power is this, merging our mind, or the compassion, Tonren. It may not be so esoteric, but those things, real devotion and love, compassion. At the time of death, if we are really able to generate that love, may my death benefit, whatever, even I go to the hell, if benefit, please, may I be able to benefit wherever I'm born. Then if we are able to cultivate at the time of death like that, no doubt about that, next rebirth will be a good one. But it doesn't mean we should not learn power practice. We are practicing, but the basis of the power is that, my teacher was like that, right? You heard about his story. He asked His Holiness where I should be reborn, what's the best way he was able to control over or gain the control over his own death. We're going to talk more about that. So how that we can control over our mind, because we can control over our inner wind. If we are able to control over or master our inner wind, prana, then we can master the mind. We cannot just master the mind conceptually. Try to convince ourselves in our practice. That's why we are so emphasized, or we are encouraged to come to our direct experience, non-conceptual realization. Only conceptual understanding is not enough. Sometimes that kind of blocks you to the non-conceptual realization to unveil. So anyway, so that's the first part, the basis.